From the time we were little, everyone around us believed that Khloe Evans and I were the perfect example of childhood sweethearts. Our houses were only a street apart, and our parents knew each other well, so we were often forced to play together. To the adults, it all looked adorable, a handsome boy and a pretty girl who, one day, would surely end up together. But the truth was completely different. Khloe and I couldn't stand each other. To me, she was nothing but a thorn in my side. It all started with what seemed like a small incident. When I was 6, during the birthday party of a mutual friend, there was a cake on the table, an adorable bear-shaped cake. I had been eyeing the bear's ear for the longest time, just waiting for the cake to be cut so I could claim it. But before I could even pick up my fork, Khloe, faster than me, snatched that very piece and, just to rub it in, winked at me with the cheekiest grin. That moment burned into my memory. It felt like she hadn't just stolen a piece of cake, but had declared to me, loud and clear, "Whatever you want, I'll take it first." From that day on, an endless rivalry between us began. In elementary school, we competed in everything, from tests to sports events. If I scored a 9, Khloe would score a 10, if I won second place, she would take first. Teachers often praised us as the perfect study partners, but I knew the truth. It wasn't motivation, it was an ongoing silent war where neither of us would yield. When we entered middle school, the rivalry only grew more intense. Khloe excelled to the point of being almost unbeatable, especially in the sciences. I wasn't bad myself, but being constantly overshadowed by her bruised my pride deeply. Over time, I became obsessed with the thought that I had to defeat Khloe, no matter what. It was during that phase that I did something I still look back on with equal parts embarrassment and amusement. I started writing anonymous love letters to Khloe. At first, my purpose wasn't to confess or express genuine feelings, it was simply to distract her. I thought that if she spent her time wondering who the mysterious sender was, or got carried away by those romantic words, her focus on studying would slip. And for a while, my plan worked. She seemed distracted sometimes, even smiled absent-mindedly in class, and I managed to outscore her in a few tests. But what I didn't expect was how those letters would trap me in a different kind of spiral. The more I wrote, the easier it became to pour out sweet words, sentiments I'd never dare admit face to face. Little by little, I realized I was slipping into the role of that anonymous sender, a romantic, gentle person who was nothing like the irritable version of myself that Khloe always saw. Still, I never had the chance to confess. At our high school graduation ceremony, everything came to a head in the most unexpected way. In front of hundreds of students and teachers, Khloe suddenly stepped onto the stage and boldly declared, "I've liked you for a very long time." The crowd erupted into cheers, laughter, and curious stares all directed at me. In that moment, my heart pounded wildly. I didn't know how to react, flustered, overwhelmed, embarrassed. But before I could say a single word, Khloe laughed. And it wasn't the shy laugh of a girl confessing her feelings. It was mischievous, teasing, triumphant. That was when I realized, her so-called confession was nothing but a joke, a final prank to get under my skin before we both walked away from high school. The feeling in that moment was like being drenched with a bucket of ice-cold water. All the love letters, all the small efforts and fragile hopes I once held on to, were extinguished in a single instant. In front of the crowd, I forced myself to stay composed, but deep inside, a burning resentment had already taken root. If before I had only considered Khloe a rival, from that moment on, I swore I would never forgive her for that cruel joke. From a slice of cake at the age of 6 to that fake confession at graduation, my relationship with Khloe had never been peaceful. Outsiders might look at us and think we were destined, as if fate kept tying us together. But to me, she was nothing less than my sworn enemy. And I made a promise to myself, one day, I would return every wound, every humiliation she had ever given me, twice over. If high school had only been a series of mind games and childish pranks, then after college, fate once again arranged for us to collide in a way no one could have predicted. After graduation, I was determined to take a completely different path, anything to stay far away from the shadow of Khloe Evans. But my parents, longtime close friends of the Evans family, had another plan. In their eyes, Khloe was the perfect role model, accomplished, independent, and impressive for having founded and managed her own company right after college. So, despite my fierce objections, they made a decision that sealed my fate. They sent me to become Khloe Evans' personal assistant. To me, it felt like a life sentence. After years of trying to break free from the endless cycle of competing with her, I was pulled right back into it. I resisted, argued, even begged, but against my parents' stern insistence and the Evans family's expectant gazes, all I could do was nod bitterly in defeat. Personal assistant sounded fancy, but in reality, it was nothing more than being a glorified servant. The first day I stepped into Khloe's luxury apartment, I was stunned. Khloe was no longer the loud, stubborn girl I once knew. Standing before me was the very embodiment of an ice queen. Her face was perpetually cold, her eyes sharp as blades, her words curt and distant. At the company, employees respected her and feared her. But once the apartment doors shut, Khloe transformed into someone entirely different, closed off, lazy, and, above all, utterly obsessed with gaming. Her sleek, modern apartment was littered with high-end electronics, computer screens, consoles, gaming headsets, scattered all over the living room. Khloe could spend hours in front of the screen, coldly sniping enemies in a virtual world, completely ignoring my existence. And so, my job as her assistant quickly devolved into cooking, laundry, cleaning, and making sure the young CEO ate and slept properly. I seethed with frustration, cursing my miserable fate under my breath. But the more I observed her, the more I realized Khloe wasn't as simple as she appeared. Beneath that icy exterior was a girl who lived with strict discipline, a girl who seemed lonely, maybe even a little broken. Despite owning her own company, Khloe showed no interest in wild parties or basking in the spotlight of a successful young entrepreneur. Instead, she withdrew quietly, burying herself in the virtual world of games to escape the pressures and the emptiness inside her heart. With his stubborn nature, he refused to back down. If they were forced to live together, he would not let himself be walked all over. In every small task, he found ways to resist, sometimes by teasing, sometimes by deliberately going against Khloe's wishes just to see her reaction. But instead of flaring up like she used to, Khloe would simply arch a brow, cast him a cold glance, and calmly continue holding her game controller. That icy indifference drove him crazier than her old habit of picking loud fights, and yet, there was one thing he couldn't deny: Khloe's change intrigued him. She was no longer the mischievous girl who once enjoyed embarrassing him in front of crowds. Now, she had become a composed, proud woman, so closed off that he sometimes couldn't fathom her at all. That very mystery pulled him closer, even though his lips never stopped grumbling. Their shared life began this way, full of petty conflicts and a wall of coldness that seemed impenetrable. But he had no idea that this very period would mark the first cracks in their long-standing enmity, making way for something entirely different. One afternoon, while helping out at Khloe's office, he accidentally let slip the word babe. It wasn't part of some calculated tease, it was simply a slip of the tongue, uttered in a moment of exhaustion. But Khloe's reaction caught him off guard. She froze, her normally pale cheeks tinged with a faint blush. Her wide eyes trembled beneath fluttering lashes, as if the word had struck something deep within her. He paused, then curved his lips into a small smile, realizing this might be the very first crack in the icy wall she had built around herself. From that day forward, he never missed a chance to push her buttons. Every time Khloe issued an order with her usual sternness or ignored him with cold indifference, he would smirk and reply, "Sweetheart, what do you want me to do next?" Or "Darling, coffee or tea? I'll prepare whichever you like." At first, Khloe's reactions were explosive. She would frown, her voice sharp, "Don't call me those ridiculous names." But ironically, the angrier she grew, the redder her face became, and that only encouraged him further. At night, when they returned home, the atmosphere grew even more subtle. Khloe would keep her nightly habit of gaming into the early hours, while he busied himself cleaning up and preparing breakfast for the next day. But whenever he sat beside her and teased, "Honey, you lost again," whenever she failed in a game, Khloe would falter. Her jaw clenched, and she tried to sound cold, "Shut up," but her ears burned bright red, and her hands shook as she gripped the controller. Little by little, their relationship began to change. No longer filled with pure hatred, nor separated by the chasm of two sworn enemies. Instead, their days became dotted with ambiguous moments, half playful, half sincere. He started watching Khloe more closely. Beneath that frosty exterior, she wasn't always strong. There were nights when he'd wake to find her curled up by the window, eyes distant, her proud mask nowhere in sight. He never asked questions, never intruded, just quietly set a warm cup of tea on the table beside her. Each time, she would glance at him, hesitate for a moment, then look away. But clearly, the distance between them was shrinking. The more he teased, the more Khloe lost her composure. Once, in the middle of a heated argument over a project, he suddenly leaned in close and whispered, "Calm down, love. Don't get angry, or you'll ruin that pretty face." Khloe froze, utterly speechless. Her lips parted as if to retort, but no words came out. The sight made him chuckle, while she snatched up her files and fled straight into her room, leaving him behind with a quiet, satisfied smile. What he never expected was that his patience and those seemingly harmless jokes would open a new door in their relationship. If before he had only seen Khloe as an enemy, a rival who pushed him to compete relentlessly, now he was beginning to see a different side of her, both strong and fragile, cold yet easily moved. And every time he thought of the way her face flushed, his heart beat faster than usual. As for Khloe, though she tried to deny it, she too realized she was changing. Every time she heard those gentle nicknames, her heart skipped a beat. She kept asking herself, why couldn't she stay calm in front of him, the way she always did with everyone else? She hated the feeling of being led along by him, hated that she grew so flustered she lost her usual icy composure. But deep inside, Khloe also began to fear something else. If those words ever stopped, would she feel empty? From that moment, their relationship had stepped into a new turning point. No longer childhood enemies, but not yet lovers. They were standing on a fragile boundary, where every gesture, every glance, every word stirred their hearts. And that blurry line itself became the beginning of an unexpected love story. For weeks, his sweet teasing lingered in Khloe's mind like an obsession. Every time he accidentally or deliberately called her babe, sweetheart, or even wifey, her heart, once as solid as an ice wall, quivered with each beat. Khloe had always thought she was too used to fierce competition since childhood, too used to hiding her feelings behind a cold facade. But in front of him, every defense seemed to melt away. She grew flustered, sulky, and then angry at herself for reacting so uncontrollably. One evening, after they wrapped up a rushed project and returned home late, he sprawled comfortably on the sofa, half smiling as if waiting for her to speak first. Khloe couldn't stand his endless teasing anymore. Finally, she burst out, "Why do you keep calling me with those ridiculous nicknames?" He raised an eyebrow, eyes gleaming with mischief. "Because you look cute when you blush." That casual reply froze her in place. Her hands clenched tightly. After a moment's hesitation, like summoning all the courage she had stored for years, she blurted out, "How long are you going to keep pretending? I know everything." He stiffened slightly. No, what? Khloe took a deep breath, her gaze steady yet trembling. I know you were the one who wrote those anonymous love letters back in high school. The room fell into silence. The smile vanished from his lips. A secret he thought had been buried for years was now laid bare. He wanted to deny it, but Khloe's eyes were too serious, too sincere for him to keep up the act. Since when, did you know? He asked softly, his voice lower than usual. Khloe pressed her lips together, holding back her emotions. Since the very first time I received the third letter. The style, the handwriting, the choice of words, it was all too obvious. I just pretended to be oblivious, so you could believe you were hiding it well. He fell silent. A mix of shame and a faint sense of relief seeped into his chest. For years, he had always believed himself to be weak, resorting to petty tricks just to distract her. But now, he realized Khloe had seen through it all. She had simply chosen not to say anything. Then, why did you never expose me? He asked with a bitter smile. Khloe bit her lip, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Because I didn't hate them. On the contrary, I hoped the sender was you. I waited for you to admit it, but you never did. And then, on graduation day, I did something foolish. Tears rolled down Khloe's cheeks. She clutched the sleeve of her blouse tightly, her voice trembling. That confession back then, it wasn't meant to mock you. I truly liked you, but I chose a way that was too flashy. When I saw your eyes that day, filled with anger, filled with hurt, I knew I had lost my chance. He froze. The wounds he had carried all those years suddenly wavered. He recalled the image of Khloe standing in the middle of the schoolyard, her radiant smile trembling slightly, a smile he had dismissed. He had always thought he was just a joke to her, but the truth was, she had been sincere. Slowly, he stepped closer, lifting her face gently in his hands. His voice was hoarse. You really liked me since that day. Khloe burst into tears and nodded. I never stopped liking you. You were just too stubborn to see it. His heartbeat thundered in his chest. All the resentment, all the misunderstandings and bitterness over the years suddenly felt meaningless. Pulling her into his arms, he whispered, Khloe, I'm sorry. I was a fool. I let my hatred blind me. But from now on, I don't want to lose you again. In his warm embrace, Khloe sobbed uncontrollably, as though releasing all the burdens she had carried for years. For the first time, she was no longer the Ice Queen, no longer his rival, but simply a fragile woman yearning for love. That night, they sat side by side for a long time. Confessions, tears, and laughter blended together. From that moment on, their relationship changed completely. No more hatred, no more games, only two hearts that had once lost each other, finally finding their way back. From the moment they officially became lovers, their lives transformed. The days of cold wars and teasing filled with hidden meanings now turned into sweet moments that made others envious. At the company, Khloe Evans, once famous as the Ice Queen for her cold appearance and reserved personality, began to reveal a side no one thought existed. The once stern director, who used to address employees with a sharp tone and piercing gaze, was now often seen smiling, her expression softening whenever her eyes landed on her assistant. Unsurprisingly, rumors spread quickly throughout the company. It wasn't long before the two openly admitted the truth. Yes, they were a couple. The staff's reactions varied. Some were utterly shocked, unable to believe the Ice Queen was capable of public romance. Others admired them, gossiping endlessly about the sweetest office love story. But one thing was certain, ever since their relationship went public, the office atmosphere had noticeably softened, as Khloe was no longer the untouchable boss she used to be. Outside of work, their shared life also became vibrant and colorful. Khloe no longer hid herself away in her own little world of consoles and cold computer screens. Instead, she pulled him into the games she loved, turning gaming into their own special kind of date night. Sometimes, she got so competitive that she would yell right into his ear, "Hubby, you're too slow. Cover me, now." He could only laugh, pretending to give in, only to suddenly turn the tide and snatch victory. At those moments, Khloe would pout, sulking like a child, a far cry from the Ice Queen image she carried at work. Their love wasn't just filled with romantic moments, but also with endless teasing and playful banter. He never dropped the habit of calling her sweet nicknames, babe, princess, or even my queen. Every time, Khloe would put on a stern face and snap, "Shut up. We're at the office." Yet the faint blush on her ears always betrayed her. And he, of course, never stopped. To make up for all the years of misunderstandings and quarrels, Khloe started spoiling him in her own way. One evening, when he returned from work and opened the living room door, he froze in shock. A brand new gaming setup was glowing brightly before him, high-end PC, the latest consoles, and even a professional gaming chair. He stood speechless, unable to say a word, when Khloe crossed her arms proudly and declared, "From now on, you have no excuse to run away anymore. We'll keep playing until I finally beat you." He burst out laughing, touched yet helpless. It was obvious she wasn't just trying to share his hobby, this was her way of saying, "You're part of my world now." The more time they spent together, the more they realized their feelings weren't something new at all. In truth, they had existed quietly since their teenage years, only buried under stubbornness and pride. Now, with nothing left to hide, their bond felt both genuine and profound. Mornings, he cooked breakfast for her, while she complained but still ate everything happily. Evenings, they sprawled across the sofa, watching movies while arguing about which character was cooler. Sometimes, an unexpected hug or a stolen kiss during lunch breaks at the office made their love burn even brighter. Khloe Evans, once an untouchable ice queen, had now turned into a sweet woman who shamelessly called her lover hubby. And he, once a man consumed by old grudges, had become someone blissfully happy, finally conquering the heart he once thought was unreachable. Their life together was simple, yet full of laughter, love, and companionship. Most importantly, both of them understood, the journey from enemies to lovers wasn't just a romance, it was proof that sometimes, true love needs to take the longest, most winding road, only to finally return them to each other. In the months that followed, their shared life gradually settled into a rhythm, but not without its little conflicts. The male lead, a die-hard gamer, would dive into his PC or consoles the moment he finished work. He played so passionately that he often forgot to eat or sleep, and even once missed an evening date with Khloe because of a fierce combat match. Khloe, who had once been cold and distant, now found herself easily jealous, and secretly enjoyed stirring up little dramas just to grab his attention. One evening, while he was wearing headphones and fully focused on battling a boss with his friends, Khloe suddenly came over and sat right on his lap. "Babe, I'm hungry," she whispered softly into his ear, her voice gentle but teasing. He startled, almost pressing the wrong button, and hurriedly pulled off his headset. "What are you doing?" "I was about to win," he exclaimed, both exasperated and amused. Khloe gave him a mischievous smile. "So, between the game and me, who would you choose?" Her unexpected question left him speechless. His teammates burst into laughter over the mic. With no choice, he logged out of the game, lifted her up, and carried her to the kitchen. All right, you're number one. The game is just for fun." Khloe finally smiled sweetly, but inside, her heart warmed, knowing that he always put her first. Of course, sometimes their quarrels were real. Once, Khloe was so busy with a new project that she barely paid him any attention for days. He, being used to her constant care, began sulking. He refused to cook, didn't do laundry, and just lay sprawled on the sofa sighing, "You don't love me anymore." At first, Khloe thought he was joking, but seeing his genuinely sulky face, she felt both annoyed and amused. "You're such a child," she scolded. But that night, she put aside all her work, sat next to him, held his hand, and whispered, "I'm busy, but I've never stopped thinking of you." Just that one sentence, and all his sulking instantly melted away. Their little conflicts gradually became the spice of their relationship. Each time they argued, they found an even sweeter way to make up. One time, after bickering about whose turn it was to wash the dishes, both of them got upset and refused to back down. But only a few hours later, Khloe wrote a little note, "Sorry hubby, I love you so much." She stuck it on his computer screen. When he saw it, he laughed, scooped her up, spun her around, and promised to do the dishes for a whole week to make up for it. Little by little, their bond grew stronger. He no longer saw Khloe as the childhood nemesis, but as the one true partner of his life. He began thinking of the future, of telling his parents about their relationship. One weekend afternoon, while Khloe was curled up on the sofa playing a mobile game, he sat beside her and held her small hand. "Khloe, I think it's time to tell my parents about us." She froze, looking up at him with worried eyes. "Really? But, what will they think of me? You know I'm not the type of daughter-in-law people expect." He chuckled, brushing her hair gently. "You only need to be yourself. My parents value sincerity more than appearances. And, once they meet you, they'll see just how amazing you are." Khloe fell silent for a while before nodding, though her heart still trembled. Once known as the Ice Queen, she now felt as nervous as a love-struck girl, afraid of being rejected by his family. In the days that followed, she even practiced speaking politely and tried to learn a few traditional dishes, hoping to earn points with her future in-laws. Seeing this, he couldn't help but feel both amused and moved. Wrapping her in his arms, he whispered, "You don't need to change a thing. My parents will love you for who you are." Finally, the day came. Khloe prepared carefully, wearing an elegant dress that was both graceful and modest. Standing before the mirror, she turned to him and asked softly, "Do I look okay?" He held her hand and smiled, "Better than I ever imagined. You're the girl I've wanted to bring home for a long time." When they stepped into his house, his parents were momentarily surprised. For years, they had always thought Khloe and he were nothing more than sworn enemies. But just by the way he held her hand, by the way their eyes lingered on each other, they immediately understood that things had changed. After a few conversations, the atmosphere gradually warmed. His parents realized that although Khloe seemed cold on the outside, deep down she was genuine and full of affection. That evening, as they left his house, Khloe let out a long sigh of relief and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I thought I was going to faint from nerves," she admitted softly. He tightened his grip on her hand and chuckled, "You did wonderfully. From now on, we have nothing left to hide." They walked together under the streetlights, their fingers intertwined. The little quarrels, the childish arguments, the sweet reconciliations, all had become the foundation that made their love stronger. Khloe, once the Ice Queen, had now become a warm, loving partner. And he, once a boy consumed by resentment, had learned how to love and forgive. And so, their story of enemies turned lovers closed with a brand new beginning, a future they would build together, overcoming every storm, and living fully in the love they had fought so long to find.